Hello, and welcome to the place of wrath and tears, where everything is terrible, but we're all having a grand time.
Mhm.
I keep wanting to introduce people, but the stage manager Curtis once again has created a fantastic video that means that I don't have to do that, and I'm so thankful for him to do that. Everyone is here tonight. One might notice that Bethany has shorter hair today. We are all going to play pretend because Kate's fabulous and exciting, highly mobile life meant that she unexpectedly was not where Bethany is. So we're all going to use our powers of imagination because Kate's the most important part of that character, and she's here, for which we are thankful. For those of you that haven't caught up to last week, I very strongly recommend pausing this fucking video and watching it. If you don't want to, you get to find out with Elon what the whole fuck gone down. Yeah, if you have any pearls, you might want to ready to clutch them. And yes. So we don't really know in this moment what our motivations and goals are. So once we have our little bit of check-in scenes, we're then going to assess and ask the players where they want to go. So let's get Matthew back into, I can't say back into the illusion, although I'm so fucking happy with that line. Let's get Matthew back into Metropolis, or at least a place adjacent to Metropolis. Matthew, you have been subjected to many things in your life. You had your hand abraded away in a horrible swarm of, gosh, you hope they weren't angels. You've been literally haunted by the specter of measly death. You've seen things no one should have seen. And that's just some of the spooky stuff. You have also just simply done some terrible things, mundanely terrible things. And through it all, there has been a couple of lines, but one of them is your rejection of outside control. You like being in charge. You do not like things affecting you. You don't mind really so much having to respond to things, but being affected by them you find repugnant, especially if they inhibit you from doing anything you want to as soon as you want to do it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so as you are examining the giant chunk of black basalty sort of stone that that throne is made out of in the control room, when you feel it or something kind of feel around the edges of your mind, if you've ever either done or seen someone like try to find seams in a piece of beautiful furniture, where they kind of run their fingers down, feeling the grain, waiting to feel that transition from piece of wood to piece of wood. That's what you feel around your mind. Something is running its fingers around your mind, trying to find the weak spots, handles, places it can dig in and pull.
I mean, knowing how Matthew thinks and how you have so eloquently put how he acts, I mean, the response to that is in many ways the only response that he knows how to do, which is to do the same thing back. Because his goal is, if you're going to try to find my weak spots to control me or to use me, I will find yours, and I will find them faster, and I will find them better. Because he has a deeply overinflated sense of ego and confidence, even after all of this.
Well, if you want to If you want to sit at the high seat, you have to keep aiming high. So let's see how you can act under pressure in this moment.
So
And
glad
then
I brought
we'll-
up that coolness.
It's either a 2 or a 16.
It is a base 16. No, base 15, and then I have coolness
Oh,
2.
man.
So that is a that's what I was checking to see how much cool I have. So that is a 17.
Okay. Surprising very few people, Matthew is apparently very calm, cool, and collected under pressure. And so when you realize that sitting in this stone is, you don't want to call it a mind, because a mind implies at least some level of completeness, of continuity. This is more like a jagged, broken off lump of impulse. And the impulse is to suborn. It doesn't care what you are or what it is. It has no goal. It is just, it is trying to create in anything around it a desire to kneel and to prostrate themselves before it. Maybe not actually before it like an altar, but certainly mentally, that anything this thing contacts, it demands and expects that it place itself beneath them mentally, spiritually. But it doesn't feel like it has a goal. It feels more like atmospheric pressure than it does something but it's an immense weight on your mind. And so this immense weight on you, bearing you down, demanding that you kneel. How does Matthew so expertly respond to this? How did you act under this pressure?
I think that he does something which sounds very touching when you think about it in a familial sense, and is the worst possible thing in a real sense, which is that he takes a page from Bethany's book.
Okay.
Because who better to look to when it comes to dealing with the supernatural than his dear older sister? And he tries to consume it. Like, he wants that power, and that like, he's like, this is my desire, this is my thing, it doesn't have a goal, it should be in me that I can force others to do this, that I can do this sort of thing. And he's literally trying to subsume this atmosphere into himself to have it for himself. It's essentially trying to eat the soul of the rock. I don't know if that's really a thing he can do, but he's essentially trying to like pull a Bethany, because it's the only way he understands how one takes over in the spiritual realm. It's the only person that he's ever seen really do that. And so I think that's the idea, that it's this idea of consumption on a soul deep level.
That's terrible. I love it. Okay. I don't think that I'm going to say that that's not something that you can do just with that one roll, but you can keep your mental footing. You are in control. And so as you kind of try to consume this thing, as you try to acquire it, to use a capitalistic term, let's do a hostile takeover. Let's throw the entire like 1982 business manual at it. Matthew, were you sitting on the throne, standing on it? Were your hands on it? Like, what position were you in physically as this contest of wills began?
I believe because he had bled on it, at one point.
Yes.
And then he taunted the poor being that
You you really did.
that like did that like tried to stop him. And I think then he sat on it and he would have put his hands on it, skin to metal to rock. He would have put both hands on it to try to like commune with it essentially.
Okay.
So
Kind of
he's
like
sitting.
like an authority pose, like shoulders back, head up, hands down.
Yeah.
Okay. In a moment, kind of as your attention on the surroundings around you waver for a moment, as you focus more into this very exhausting, apparently, excuse me, in this act of kind of acquisition. One hesitates to use the word cannibalism, but we might be getting there by the end of this conversation. Um, you find yourself in a room. The room is broken down. It is a ruin. It reminds Matthew of some of the pictures of these 500-600-year-old buildings that were bombed into rubble during the all too recent World War II. Just the idea of something huge and titanic and solid that was designed to last until Judgment Day being shattered and broken. And around you are other pieces of this rock, and you can kind of see that the side of this building is made of this black rock, and inside there is what looks like maybe a sarcophagus, something upright, something set into the wall. So
Um,
you're sitting on a piece of
yeah.
so the wall that you're sitting on is broken down, torn down. You are in a massive building. So kind of if you look up or lean your head back, you're not going to be able to really grasp the scale of it. The immensity of
Yeah.
it does threaten to dwarf you, and also just the titanic power in it. There is something that the pressure has increased significantly. It is almost like this chunk of rock has reached back into some kind of memory to recall
Mhm.
that it was part of something else, and is kind of like reaching into those memories to find more strength just to try to get its hands on you. But in that, it has relocated itself now to a place where it once was. And so you're kind of sitting on that broken down rock. It looks like there's been either an explosion or crumbling or just damage, and you're sitting on the broken in wall. The room is 30 mumble feet. It's a very big room, but
Yeah.
sitting against the wall, and it's very ever so slightly pie shaped, as if you were in a tower that could be considered vaguely round. Um, Against the inside wall, built into the wall, so it's smooth, is this sarcophagus, and it has unspeakably complicated art all over it. Stone carving, intricate, down to the point where even standing across the room, there's a part of you that says, if I got a microscope and looked, I would still see detail that I couldn't quite grasp. Just the intricacy of it is borders on, if Matthew has ever seen pictures of cells under a microscope,
Hmm.
just the way they're all interlocked, and there's stuff inside them and there's stuff between them. It's just it's overwhelming. But the part that is actually more upsetting to you than that is the perfect, beautiful, immaculately polished, and intensely recognizable little hardwood side table. It's one of these little three-legged ones. It's got the three little legs, and it comes down in that wasp waist shaped, and then it comes up to the top piece. But because this is good furniture, everything is nice and thick and heavy. This isn't IKEA, so this isn't.
Yeah.
This is all of the beautiful lines and arcs and carvings. And Matthew, even from here, you can see the gouge that you put on it when you were a younger man. When you fool, ran through your father's office in one of those rare moments that he left the door open and knocked it over, and it banged against the fireplace. And there is the card, some piece of paper folded. It's about that long, maybe about that high, and you can see beautiful, intricate, all the swirls, like Gilded Age level script across it. And you can see it, but you don't know what it says.
I feel like he's unable to not try to move forward to try to find out what it says.
On this table from your home, and it should not be here, it cannot be here, it must not be here. Clearly, whatever you are entangled with is using something inside your mind to create this landscape. It is. Have you seen or read American Psycho?
I've seen it. I've not read it.
Okay. One of the lighter scenes, the scene where Patrick Bateman has an internal meltdown over the other,
that one.
The business cards, when he's just like, the weight, the density, the thickness, it's buttery soft. I have to kill this man. I gotta kill this man level of luxury paper, and written on it. And I'll tell you what the writing is like, and then I'll tell you what it says written on it. And you hate it because it's got that ever so slight imperfections that come from a handwritten piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can see that one little spot where one tiny little curly Q has just a little extra from the one on top of the letter where they just hesitated to lift up the pen 1/10 of a second. But it is otherwise functionally perfect. And you can actually see in one of the spots a tiny head gleam of fresh, glossy ink, as if this was just written moments ago. And it says, reserved for Malos Van Horst. And the urge, and it's so deep down in you, Matthew. It's one of your first urges, and it's one of the ones that you hate and love the most. The urge to take your father's place.
Yep.
Lays upon you.
It's such an urge too. He's been trying over and over again to make himself something that isn't just what his father made him. Over and over again, that he can be more than that he can be better than that. And because he doesn't fully understand, I mean, he can't at this point, what his father even wanted to make him, because I don't think that his father, by the end, knew what he wanted to make him, because he was a conflicted man.
He very much was.
That there's, in that, I feel like there's a level of uncertainty for Matthew that he never knows whether or not he is exactly what his father wanted him to be deep down, or if he is his own person in any way, shape, or form. And there's no way to know, because he can't know via what the Phoenix Society wanted. Because the Phoenix Society, in the end, our father went against it.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that. So like there's definitely that sort of moment where he very carefully and delicately places down the card, in a way that's very much sort of like, I want to crumple this and throw this away in a tantrum,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to let myself do that. Um, and he will place one of his hands against the sarcophagus.
It has a smooth but also slightly raspy texture. It doesn't look like it's supposed to. It doesn't look like the way you think it would feel.
Mhm.
It feels now in this moment like the calluses that ring someone's hand right around here. And in the few times, I can't count them on one hand, but you probably wouldn't have to take off your shoes. In the few moments of true, like, unguarded emotional vulnerability, aka love to healthy people, that your father showed you, one of the things that you remember is, like, his hand, giant to you at the time as a young man, Matthew, like patting you on the cheek. That very kind of old world where there should have been more, but that was the physical contact that he could find within himself. You don't even remember what you did, but you remember distinctly the feeling of Papa Mal's calloused hand against your cheek. And when you touch it with your hand, you are not sure if you are feeling his hand or your own cheek with the very beginnings of pubescent stubble, almost perfectly mimicking each other's texture.
He will even go so far as to like rest his forehead against it for a moment.
All
And
you have to
then,
do is get in, and you'd never have to disappoint him again.
I know. And then he will say, every true parent wants their child to succeed more than they did. And he will take his hand back and he will step back.
And a shriek of avian animalistic rage tears through the air so hard and fast that it blows the little reservation tag right down the road like a leaf. And the table kind of goes dink, 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 and threatens to fall. And there is this terrible pressure, Matthew, both kind of physical in this mindscape, and then a terrible bowing down pressure that this is no longer playing a fucking game. It is pushing and pulling you in, or trying to at least, towards this sarcophagus. And it is so hard to turn your back on the idea of never failing again. And this is such a powerful internal conflict. Let's see if you can keep it together.
Let's see, indeed. $13.
I'll take it. The pressure is intense, it's powerful, and the wind is blowing around, and you will be unable to forget the feeling of your father's hand against your cheek and your hand against your own cheek, maybe your son in Pittsburgh's cheek. You don't know, but that contact you're feeling in both directions at once. And so when you turn away from this moment, it is not in the victory that you wanted. You did not bend this literal lump of impulse to your will. You got away. And it feels very much like two predators disengaging and starting to stalk. And you return back to the control room with that vibe.
That tracks.
Yes. And before you can entirely finish that long breath in and long breath out that you really need to center yourself with right now, Clara comes audibly stumbling down the hall. Matthew, panic. Something else in her voice. There is something broken in the way she is speaking.
Matthew, I don't know what you were doing, but we have to go. There's a door open. We have to go. We figured it out. But we have to go now. Are you okay?
Matthew will get up. What am I seeing?
She looks pretty much in the same condition she was before. So there's the injury on her arm, and she's strung out and kind of in withdrawal and exhausted, but she does not have any new injuries physically.
There is a bright, there is something behind her eyes that is brighter and glassier than you're used to.
Can I break off a chunk of the stone before we go? The answer can be no.
How badly do you want it?
I want it real bad. Want it
You'd
real
have to
bad.
come back. You'd have to come back for it. You'd have to find it. You could possibly find a tool. I'm not going to say no, but we're gonna table that for like an hour from now, after you guys all get together and talk.
After we get together, I know what's going
on. Yeah.
Show me where she is. Where's the door?
Back in the hall.
He will also walk over and, like, as much as he's still recovering from his battle of wills, he will take a brief moment to touch Clara and try to give her some sense of grounding, like he always does. Like that, there are very few things that can deviate Matthew from his desire to control the world and also be God. And Clara will always be one of those. And he does take that moment to basically like center her and center, like, checking essentially, like, you know, I'm here, you're here, we're here, okay, let's go.
She leans against him and she's just slightly shaking and clammy, and she doesn't focus as well as she normally does when they get that grounding. She's trying, but there's almost this feeling like when he does it with Bethany and he's not successful in pulling Bethany back to herself, that is the feeling he's getting off of Clara right now. And she really has not. She's trying really hard to focus and really hard to be here and knows that this is important, but going through the motions, and clearly loves him, like gives
yeah him, no
yeah, but like is just going through the motions of this is what we do and we have to get out of here, and she's not all that present.
He will follow her to where she is taking him, but he doesn't stop putting a hand on her, basically, because he is concerned.
And back down the hall we go to where she feels like she ripped a hole in reality and Bethany.
Paint me a picture with your words. I'm concerned.
This is the boudoir. This was the big bedroom with all of the piles of pillows and everything else. And Bethany, I presume, hasn't moved from wherever I think she was sitting.
Yeah, not moved.
And there is a distinct stink of vomit and kind of the smell of Clara going through detox, or no, that's withdrawal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the physical experience of withdrawal. And so there's kind of, and you know that smell, like it's not your most familiar smell, but you're like, the barf and strung out combo. That's my third favorite scented candle.
Yeah.
So you hatefully recognize that smell. And did you tear a hole?
The plan and then we had paused, was that she was using enhanced awareness until she got a failure. And the plan
Yes.
was to fail and then rip a hole in the illusion, or rip a hole where the illusion is the weakest, back
Yes.
to reality. So
I listened to that episode like an
there.
hour ago, and that just fell out of my brain while I was
Yeah.
eating dinner, apparently. That's embarrassing.
No, that's fine, but that's where we paused. So she did tear a hole. I don't think we actually fully described the hole yet, or no. I think we know where it's going off game, but she knew it worked and was running for Matthew. That was the last thing. It was like, oh, did it? Shit, Matthew, I don't know how long this is going to stay open.
Yes. Matthew, there is a wobbling kind of tooth-edged wound in the air. This doesn't feel like a portal.
No.
This doesn't feel like this isn't someplace that was done with any great deal of purpose. This is like a terrible thing that has been caught in the hand. Just like, imagine if you had on like Kevlar gloves and you had one of those giant, where the Japanese stinging hornets that are whatever, ridiculously huge, and you've got one in your hand and you're holding on to it, and you know that if you get one finger loose or the rattling of this thing makes you let go, you are so fucked. That's the feeling. But it is a hole. They have created a doorway. Clearly still in the experimental stage.
What does Bethany look like?
Bethany is conscious, and pale, and has a bandage tied over her shoulder where the terrible metal spike was that has been removed, and looks like she has, lost an amount of blood. And she's
more than zero, less than all.
Yes, more than zero, less than all. Her soul isn't leaking out of her body, so that's great. But
yeah, our scale is not great.
She has, for mechanicsy purposes, her critical wound is now a serious wound.
I don't care about mechanics.
I know.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yep. She is still of the wounded variety in a serious fashion. Kind of glassy-eyed. She also looks gently untethered from reality. in the same fashion that Clara does. It's hauntingly similar.
Yeah, that's concerning. Like Matthew basically looks at this and looks at them and says, how long is it going to stay open?
Okay. And before anybody answers you, Clara makes Bethany's little worried thinking noise. Like that, like Clara makes that noise.
Mhm.
And it feels a little ventriloquisty.
That's uncomfortable.
It's supposed to be.
Matthew will pause. What did you do to open this?
I opened it the way that when I think too hard and I'm under the influence of something and I try to see what the truth, when we're on the other side and I try to see the truth, and when Izzy lost her hand and I looked too hard for the truth and I ripped something, I did that on purpose this time. But I don't know how to do it if I'm just me, if I'm not drunk or using, or I don't know how to do it, because that's how I see the truth. And I'm not clean. I'm not using that stuff anymore. And so Bethany helped me feel different and see other things. And then I stared at the truth really hard and it ripped open. But it's not good, I don't think. And I don't know how long it's going to last, but it worked. And that's the only way I knew how to get us home.
So I'm going to do a couple quick things because this is concerning for Matthew. And one of those is magical intuition.
Okay. What are you going to attempt to magically intuit?
A creature's true nature.
Which one?
Well, if I get a good enough roll, both of them.
Okay.
He's basically like, I don't think my sisters are going to tell me what's going on with them. But something's going on with them.
I know that's a pretty good.
That was accurate.
It's accurate, probably.
No, that was accurate.
He has a concern.
Hey, what kind of dark magic is that? A smoothie?
Okay, I want everyone to just really quickly see. I don't know. Oh no, I moved them. I got a double 10. Why don't magical intuition doesn't even benefit super from a double 10. But
Yeah, there are no crits in the cult
there are
system.
no crits, but it was very impressive in this quite frankly more low stakes environment because magical intuition doesn't really have a bad fail. But you know, so yeah, with a 23, he's gonna look at his sister's. I think you get 3 different ones if it's at a 15 plus.
That sounds about
and
right.
so
Yeah.
he's gonna look at each of his sisters for a creature's true nature. And then the other one, I believe, just want to look at the 3 options.
Learn something about a creature's true nature, learn if something has a magical nature, or learn where the illusion is weakest towards other dimensions.
Okay, I'm assuming that the illusion is weakest towards other dimensions, like with this horrifying hole.
At the Portala Dentata, yes.
The Portala Dentata. So what I'll do is I'll look at the 2 at my sister's, and then I'll keep the other one for later on. Because he's like, what is going, like, he's like, there's something wrong with them that I don't know if they know what's wrong with them, but something is wrong with them, and he is trying to find that out via a creature's true nature.
Yes, and coming from the experience that you just had, one that was clearly layered in symbolism and some other things, the mind set that you're in, the headspace that you're in for this deep gazing is one that wants to think a little bit mystically.
Yeah.
And so when you look at Clara and the perception resolves itself as if something has excised her third eye, leaving a smooth, freshly, like smooth new skin, like that new healing skin, pink and pucker of just like a hole in her skull that's right here. It's like 1.5 inches across. It's way too big and it is unpleasantly deep, but it is like someone has just scooped something out of her. But also at the same time, there is a feeling like a candle sconce. It's like something has been taken out, but you could possibly light a fire there. Like there's almost like a little niche in a cave wall where someone would stick a fatty, like a lump of vaguely rendered fat as a candle to burn. So she's fine.
Yeah.
And around her is a sense of sharing, where it's the sisters mingled a little bit, like not in a permanent way, but they're very close to each other right now.
Well, that's good in a way, I'm sure.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to add to that, Erica?
The sense of sharing, like what Bethany did is a magical spell. So she's got Bethany's magic on her right now, physically. So I don't know if it's like an echo of an aura or something like that, but it's something that is never, they've never echoed this close before.
And it's not entirely healthy. Like it's not like we have bonded and are stronger for it. It's more like you got some Bethany on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's like static. It's white noise, or the static on a dead television screen, where you can kind of see echoes of ghosts behind there if you look really too hard in the snow. So we're just sharing some white noise right now. It's fine.
It's fine. Well, I'm a little more concerned about the whole excising your third eye thing that I'm seeing. What does Bethany look like?
I'm actually curious about too. So Kate, do you have enough of a sense to start that description at least?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So not as much. Let's go with the white noise through snow. Not as much as like there's no signal and it's dead, but if you've ever tried to like tune in and it's like the local station, whatever, is too far away. And so there's sort of an overlay of triple auras around a figure in the image every time. It's like that. Like Bethany is in 3 to 4 different places, possibly in front of Matthew. And one of them goes all the way over to overlap with Clara. And some of them are slightly more spread out. And some of it feels like those aura falls are into different depths, as if maybe he's seeing through to different dimensions that are surrounding Bethany, and tinged very, very close to her in the center of Bethany's aura, that is that black hole pit where her soul disappears over and over and over again as she becomes hungrier and hungrier. Right at the edge of that is something that looks very like Clara. Not fully Clara, but like it belongs to her. Like Bethany has borrowed a necklace and is never giving it back.
That's called stealing.
It was a gift.
Yeah, not if I consensually shared that third eye necklace. It's fine.
I'm just going to put out there that borrowing with the intent to never give back is usually what we call stealing.
Unless someone asks you to do it, and then it is a gift.
True. I asked her to take that necklace off my neck.
You did.
So yeah. Sorry, I just had to.
There's your 20.
Matthew looks between the two of them and says, and like he looks pale and he looks strong and he looks like he does not like what he is seeing, but this is not the time to motherfucking go into it because there's a giant hole in the world. And he says, can you keep it open?
No, I think we need to go. If we want to go home, we need to go. I don't even know if I could open another one again right now.
God, he wants that rock. He looks at his sisters. And I think what ends up pushing him over the edge is the wound in Bethany's shoulder. And like how severe that looks.
Yeah, as he's hesitating, Clara just she goes, Bethany is hurt and I am sick. We need to go home. Please.
He will say something that doesn't make a lot of sense to them necessarily. It makes a lot of sense to our viewers back home, which is, I don't need what he had. And he will help. He'll say, let's go. Bethany, can you get up? Do you need help?
Try.
Help her. I can walk.
Yeah. He will just pick Bethany up.
And the moment he has Bethany picked up, Clara tosses herself through the rip. Because she's determined to go first, especially if this goes really poorly. But she knows they're coming, or at least she hopes.
He will go in right after Clara with Bethany in his arms.
Mm-hmm.
What time is it? It's 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, this is an extremely uncomfortable passing through. This is not, this isn't the fucking Stargate where you it feels cool and there's a neat little graphic and you end up in like weird science fiction, not Egypt. This is like, this feels like what all of you tried not to think about what it felt like for all of those creatures to be pulled into the machine. This feels like a sucking in, like there are many points of contact and they are dragging you somewhere. And when you are maybe ejected is a good word from this wound you tore, it is very, very cold. And you are on a piece of stone. And none of you exit this experience with dignity. You can choose how that undignified landing looks, but none of you do it with style and panache. Excuse me. You land on this slab of metal, and it's cold, and the air is cold, and there's nothing alive here. And when you kind of find yourselves and look up and around, the place you are in is lit by gentle blue fires that have been placed in places. Your first thought was, oh, we're still in Metropolis because it has that kind of mishmash kit bash vibe, but this feels, somehow you managed to find a place that's even more dead than Metropolis. And there are little blue fires set in places just kind of like where they fit, clearly not intended for use as the building is. It's like clearly you look at one of them and one looks obviously like some kind of like a spot for a mailbox in like a brownstone sort of front, but it's not there. And there's a skull sitting there with blue flame kind of bubbling up out of it incorrectly. And you are in a 4-part classic square in a old town, and around you, it's difficult to describe. Like, I don't want to say it just feels dead. It feels like super duper dead, but there is a mortuary sense, a sense that this is gone. And Queens, what's the last mental image that you two shared before you tore a hole in the world? Do you remember? I'll remind you if you don't.
I
It
don't.
is a tiny, dirty Bethany.
Yeah.
Climbing up from out of grave dirt.
Oh, yeah.
And suddenly being home and climbing into Clara's bed and telling her it's going to be okay.
Yep.
And you are somewhere very cold and somewhere truly dead as opposed to just abandoned. And you are not back in Elysium yet.
So,
and this is going to be way harder than you think it is.
yeah.
So if you would imagine that the first hour of game was a extremely extended pre-opening credits scene, we are now going to kind of treat it as if the game just started. So let's all roll our problem dice, and any of like Sixth Sense or anything else that we would roll traditionally at the beginning of a game.
Do you want us to also roll nightmares? Do you want us to roll nightmares, or have we not?
No.
Slept? Okay.
No, you haven't slept, and you're not going to ever again.
But Matthew
That's
sure
valid.
is stressed, I'm certain.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll roll infirm.
Yeah. Ben, should I roll the new disadvantage?
No,
Okay.
but you're gonna soon. So make sure that
Okay, great.
your little note for how that works is available.
Yes, it is in the sheet now.
Hi, Captain. Yes, buddy.
So
So
I got an 11
How
for
infirm are you?
infirm, so I am feverish and flushed, but I'm not measling. So I'm at a -1 to everything, but otherwise I'm okay.
Okay. Could be a whole lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Okay. Bethany, how schizophrenic are you today?
Oh, very.
All
I rolled an
of it?
8. Yeah, I rolled an 8, -2 for brains and -1 for credit for her wound. So yeah, she's at 5. Not like it matters. It was never above it. I also rolled a 4 for 6 sense. And even with plus soul, that's an 8. So it's a 1.
Wow.
So she's not doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Because what is like, it's really like 6 sense when you go bad as. Yes, your instincts will fail to trigger during a dangerous situation. So you get a move. Like she's just going to think a thing wrong or several.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in a new place and you're going to encounter some challenges.
Yeah.
So rather than asking you, what do you want to do next? Because it's clearly difficult aside from get the fuck home, Ben, OMG. but the specifics of that desire are probably difficult to actualize right now. So the question I want to ask you is, what kind of things do you want to have get in your way? Like, what do you want your obstacles to feel like? What are the fun challenges in your mind?
We are in a different place than I thought we were going to be, which makes sense. But I am not certain what is here. Like, and I don't know because this place is very specific to Bethany, if that was just a Bethany question or not. Okay.
It's just kind of like, what vibe do you want to feel while we're in this place that you don't know the name of yet? Like, do you want like monsters? Do you want like just like atmospheric horror? Do you want to be presented with creatures that you could interact with on less, roll for initiative, roll to attack, or like a more thinky talky? Like, what kind of things do you want to have in your way?
I feel like, especially because a lot of this is us trying to find a way home, a thinky talky makes more sense for us.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now that we're like more off kilter. Like we're not here to when we go to Metropolis, we're like, we're here to rule this place. Now we're like, we want to go home. So like we're more likely to do talky than we are to do putting our dicks on the table.
Yes. Psychic or otherwise.
Psychic or otherwise.
Okay.
And yes, I'm up for new disadvantage triggering. So would like to encounter something ghostly, haunted, spiritual, whatever that is.
Oh, don't worry. I know what it is, and you're going to hate it.
Great.
So let's take a minute and recenter the characters in this scene. If you would imagine like central Italy, not Rome, but like Florence. If you could imagine a square, as in a place where 4 roads intersect at generally a 90-degree angle, not in the fanciest part of town, but in that kind of upper middle class where maybe the jewelers would live and the professional craftsmen, the the makers to the upper crust would live. It's kind of got that style. But it is lit by several, like I said, skulls that are kind of just shoved in nooks. And the flame on them is bubbling. There's kind of a lava lamp vitreousness to it that feels not very much like fire, actually, at all. And it's an uncomfortable blue. And it's not, you're not feeling any warmth from it. But outside of this space that's lit is absolute black. Like, you thought that the desert at night was dark. This is the darkness that hunted that darkness down and ate it. This is this is almost tangible. So your world has reduced to a maybe 50 by 50 square.
So when we went through the rip, the tear, and we were not able to land with dignity, I kind of get the idea that it was when Matthew saw that he was going to fall, he attempted to do his best to protect Bethany. And if he was a person who had like training, he could have done like a tuck and roll that would have not harmed him really. But he isn't. So he did a tuck and roll, and like he protected Bethany, though she was of course jostled in a probably quite painful way. But like he also like probably is pretty bruised up right now. So that's on top of the fact that he didn't fit the stone so that they could go home. And he, so like right now, like he basically stands up, picks up Bethany still, like he's still holding Bethany. He is like, Bethany's gonna have to deal with the fact that like Princess Carrie time is now.
Wow.
This is where we're at. Is Bethany has got a big old thing through her shoulder and he is concerned. And he looks around. And he doesn't say, well, this isn't fucking home. But I feel like his expression says that very clearly.
Clara only slightly misses it. She definitely feels it in her back because her indignity is she's gone to puke in the corner again. Still going through withdrawal. Like, this sucks. Everything feels wrong. And her brain doesn't want the heroin anymore, but the rest of her body is still like getting it out. So she goes to puke into eternal void. And then kind of like and looks back at Matthew and Bethany and is like, I don't know where we are. It was the best idea that I had. I don't know how to do this.
I know. None of us do. We need to figure out how to open a portal instead of cut a tear. Because that is the only way that we are going to go somewhere that we actually want to go. And I do not want the next time we do this to dump us into the inferno.
At least we know how to get home from there. But
Well,
accurate.
You know
I
how
don't
to
think
get
that we
home
would
from
get there.
one spot.
Yeah.
I don't think we'd get there.
You also closed that door, made it go away.
Yeah.
We
All right.
did.
All right.
We did. So, Bethany, he says to the person that he's holding,
Yeah.
do you know how to make portals happen? And if not, do you have any theories?
Bethany, the catharsis of sharing yourself with Clara has now paid itself back in interest.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like yourself is punishing yourself by inundating you with feelings and thoughts and visions.
Mm-hmm.
And like when Matthew moves, it almost looks like there's hooks in his skin. And so
Mm-hmm.
when he moves and talks to you, it's like little pieces of his skin and flesh are being pulled in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, instead of feeling like there is a hole inside you
Mm-hmm.
that ends in you, you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you are a hollow stone
Mm-hmm.
and that wind is whistling through you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is pretty terrible.
Bethany closes her eyes and goes very still in a posture that now both of her siblings recognize very intimately as the "it's not real" like attitude.
Yeah.
um because the only thing that's in her mind right now, with the hollowness she feels, is, I could be a portal, but I don't think I'd survive it.
My heart.
Claire wouldn't do it anyway. But yep.
So when she goes still and silent, Matthew knows that. Matthew knows that feel, that gist. And that actually like makes him a little bit less angry, because it's really hard for him to be angry at Bethany when Bethany is going through her own personal hell. Like, he doesn't really need to punish her. She's doing that on her own. So he just very gently presses a dry kiss to her forehead and says, if you need to ask us anything, we can tell you. And then he looks at Clara, who's busy vomiting, and he's like, okay.
No, she's kind of picked herself up. Do you have a flask on you? Do you have?
Yes.
Give it to me.
He will
just went over this.
He will pause and he'll say, it's in my pocket.
She reaches for it and
yeah, no, he lets her get it. It's just like he's holding Bethany.
Yeah. So she reaches for it and opens it, and having just finished puking, chugs, apparently, because she's going to try to use enhanced awareness for its actual purpose of like figuring out where the fuck we are and what this place is. And yeah.
Oh my lord.
One of these days she'll figure out she doesn't have to be out of her head for it. But... Okay, that's an 11. We didn't rip things open again.
Yay!
That's nice. So that's plus soul. Did you add your soul?
Oh, I didn't. It's only a 14. That's okay. So close.
You get some basic impressions regarding the location.
Mhm.
Normally in this situation, I would give you some vague description that kind of gives you a vibe.
Mm-hmm.
However, the place you are is so deeply embedded in human culture that while you would hesitate to label anything very specifically, Clara, this place is death, and there's a definite gravity to it where it feels like things are being pulled down, and nothing here is warm, and there is no heat in these stones. And you look now with the booze kind of warm in your belly, in your very empty, very chemically imbalanced,
Mm-hmm.
recently emptied belly, and just promising you a terrible time very shortly.
Oh yeah.
And you look at the skulls, and they're bubbling kind of lava lampy flame. And in this moment, they look less like fire and more like the bubbles drifting out of a mouth of someone who just finished drowning.
Oh.
And it feels like there is this terrible, immense pressure, but not pressure in the air. It's psychic pressure, as opposed to just gravity pulling you down. And it's such a thing that even whatever strange, mystical fire, light thing, whatever these skulls are, it's like it's so dense that they can't even finish bursting into flame. And the absolute darkness right over there is intense and oppressive and eternal. And the finality of this place reminds you of everything that your father's funeral wasn't. And you don't know if you would call it this out loud or maybe capitalize it, but Clara, you're in the underworld. You're in like Metropolis, but dead. You're like Inferno, but a corpse.
Great. Cool. Great. I think I pulled us down. I think I pulled us into whatever you want to consider the underworld, whatever that would be. I think that's where we are.
Well, the good thing is that there are at least stories and myths of people leaving the underworld.
Yes.
So hopefully we can too. Did you drink everything in there? He looks at the flask.
Not everything. Do you want to kill it?
I want to keep it in case we need it.
Okay.
Matthew has had a classical education. He knows like Greek mythology, and that's what he's working on right now. Is basically Greek mythology of like, okay, well,
I am entirely content, all three of you reaching into your own player lives, steeped in various life experiences and mythologies and lores. All of you, like all of these characters, were raised at the one could are like the height of civilization, at the apex of affluence, I mean,
Yeah.
if you, yes, the library was fantastic. It had all of those books, like whatever, all of the dusty, crusty leather and canvas bound books. So whatever mythology you want to know, you can know.
Yeah. Like I feel like he would focus on Greek because again, classical education in the 50s, or 40s and 30s. He he has the very awkward thing of kind of like putting out a hip so that Clara can put it back in his pocket. But I will actually use my last hold on intuition. And what I'm looking for is where the illusion is thinnest, but specifically the illusion. He is trying to see if there is a direction, and I feel like I would classify it of a direction of living warmth. Not inferno warmth, where it's like this hot, fiery mess, right? But that comforting illusion warmth, that thing that cage that we know is a cage now, but that we know is a cage of comfort. He's looking to see what direction to even go in. And so, like, that's sort of the thing of like, is there a beacon on the hilltop, essentially, of a direction to start moving?
The only thing you can get in terms of direction is unsurprisingly a sense of up.
Legit.
It feels very Orphean, although it offends me to try to turn that into an adjective, but it feels very much of an Orpheus vibe of that up and out. The underworld always gets deeper and deeper, and it gets worse and worse, or further and further away from whatever home base is as you go deeper. So the general concept of up and kind of putting your face almost against the pressure that you're feeling and just always walking straight into the wind.
Matthew basically looks at Clara and he says, we're going to get out of here and we're going to get home. And we just need to start moving. But we're going to do this and we're going to all get out of here together.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay, Clara. This is at least a place that we know a little bit about via stories. Metropolis, we don't have a lot of stories about outside of Papa's books.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's almost like there was a concerted effort to wipe anything remotely resembling Metropolis from human reality.
yeah. So in a way, let's think of this as we're not all the way there, but we took a step. Okay.
I almost feel like there's something in those skulls that wants to get out and they can't. It might be stupid to crack one open, but I don't know. An idea.
My only worry is that if they're put in there, it's for a reason.
Conversely, they're the only light-producing things you have seen.
True.
Bethany is incredibly fascinated by the skulls and the light and she is possibly hallucinating voices at this point about them, like they're the thing that is consuming her mind while you all are having actual important conversations about what's happening.
Poor Bethany.
She is often like very upsetting.
There are
it's the right combination of like movement and color and light and morbid.
It's all right there, and it's like they have the people shape also, so it's like, oh, you are in the context of this possibly more than just decor, you know, as a thing. You might have bits. But she's also still just in Matthew's arms and very like, when she manages to be still and when she's like not looking at Matthew's face that has hooks that aren't there in it, she's instead just like staring at the skulls.
Well, it's better than Clara's face.
Yeah.
Clara's skull has been removed.
Mm-hmm.
Like right above the ocular orbit, it has been removed. And you know that this is a hallucination. And this is why you hate it so fucking much, because you know it's a hallucination, which means it's coming out of your brain. It is not an evil, terrible world. It is
my brain.
If I may be cruel to Bethany, it is fucked up, crazy Bethany seeing fucked up shit. Like, this has no excuse. There's no justification. There's no insight to this. And so when you see the half deflated whipped cream and the long silver ice cream sundae spoon literally rattling against the top of her skull, you know that that's you.
Oh.
Yeah.
And the worst part is that you are entirely certain that if you let it melt, that means you're letting it go to waste.
Yeah. Bethany is just not looking at Clara and not looking at Matthew, and the darkness is too dark to find something to stare at, and so she is just staring at the skulls very pointedly.
Okay.
Matthew will
So
look
let's
at
take
Clara.
some actions.
Yeah.
Clara, go ahead, and then I'll go.
I was gonna say he'll say, how would we break them?
Maybe we don't want to. I still have my gun. I'm out of bullets, but it's got a handle. But it's our light. So maybe we can see something else. Clara goes to pick up the closest skull and is going to start using it as a flashlight, unless picking it up goes really poorly. And kind of shine it about to see if she can find any staircase, anything else in the darkness that wasn't being, eaten by the void.
And Matthew will mention, we want to go up.
So let's roll the tape back to Clara picks up the skull.
Yeah, that's my concern.
Because that's the part where I need to start giving you feedback.
Yes.
Okay. It's going to start small. So let's build some tension. We all know what's coming, but let's flirt with it a little.
Yeah.
So when you pick up the skull, you are struck first by blood. But like the taste of blood in your mouth and the smell of blood in your nose, and even somehow, and this is like one of those things where it's like identifying that someone you're around is being aroused by something that doesn't arouse you, kind of almost like I'm not going to make a but you know that feeling where a sensation you're experiencing, someone else is experiencing it as arousing and you are not. And this sensation is terrible because what it is you actually feel like loose blood in your sinuses.
Yeah.
As if something has inhaled so much blood that it's like gone up their nose and into their sinus cavity, and that hot, disgusting, invasive pressure is like absolutely directly connected to the greatest pleasure they've ever felt. As if the idea of having so much blood like sprayed into their mouth that it starts to fuck up like their swallow reflex is like the fucking cat's pajamas. And then you died. And you were down here and you were something else, and you kept walking and you kept walking. And it was so very dark, but somehow as you kept walking, it got a little bit brighter and a little bit brighter and a little bit brighter. And then when your bones tumbled to ash on the ground 170 million years after, oh my gosh, excuse me, after you started walking, something made of flesh and rot and hell and leeches picked up your skull and kissed it and put it in a little sconce, and like fanning a little cherry of coal back to life, brought your memories back out of your bones and trapped it here.
Okay, there's definitely something in here. Do you want out? She's speaking to the skull.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't seem to be sentient.
Okay.
Like those were all like impressions. It doesn't feel like a communication. It definitely felt something almost like magical intuition, like that.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting information and sensory input.
Okay, I don't know if it's still a thing. Maybe it's just memories. Okay.
And looking at it now, you see all the way up, starting all the way up here. Okay, so right underneath their ocular orbit are fangs.
Oh.
And it looks like there's a literal bone channel for them to slide up and down in.
That's nice.
Don't think this thing was human. Or at least it had fangs. It really loved. Oh, there was so much blood. Okay, focus. Light.
This thing loved blood the same way you remember loving heroin.
Yep. Trying not to remember that, but yes.
All I can do is make this expression.
All I can do is judge.
Yeah. All right. She's trying to turn the skull and now use it as a flashlight and not think about that.
Okay. So do you want to hold it up like this? Do you want to kind of like hold it down?
No, up and
Like,
out, and she's walking the perimeter of their box with it, trying to see if she can light a light on anything else that we haven't noticed.
Well, you can see that these passageways that there's a roof, but it doesn't feel like a roof. It feels almost like the buildings have like teetered together and then somebody just fucking committed to it and like just like finished the archways. And you do see passages going out each of the different corners, but they all quickly veer in some way to break your line of sight. You know, this one curves a little bit. This one seems to maybe go up at least a tiny bit. This one you see like almost slides down like the slides at Idlewild.
Yeah.
Like the big metal slides that you went so fast on as a kid. And you have a distinct sense that if you had tried to do this without some kind of light, that you would have died at the bottom of whatever is at that slide.
All right. This one at least seems to go up a bit.
And up we shall go.
All right. If we
And upping we will go.
Should we take another skull for more light?
Bethany, can you hold a skull?
I can hold one.
Okay. So Matthew will walk over to one of the other skulls and
Mm-hmm.
stand by it and just say, Bethany, can you take the skull?
Just pick up a skull.
Okay, so for better or for worse, Bethany does not get the same experience bomb
Yes.
that Clara did.
Mhm.
But what you do get now is this delightfully innocent, childish compulsion to catch like the
Mhm.
little oobleck lights
Yeah.
in your mouth as if you are a child during a snowfall. Like the way you see them
Yeah.
is those big, like nickel-sized flakes of snow
Mhm.
that like
Yeah.
float down like a feather in a cartoon, and just all you want to do is just like
Yeah.
it's a problem. You know it's a
Is
problem.
don't
Mhm.
eat the soul. Don't eat the soul, Bethany.
I'm hungry and empty and hollow.
We need that for light. Eat it later.
That's a mystery Mouscatool. It's going to help us later.
Oh my god. Does Bethany try to catch them in her mouth?
uh, I think she starts with like eyes, like kid eyes as big as saucers. That moment of like, this is magic and this thing, and like not thinking, just the compulsion, and her like tongue starts to come out of her mouth like she's going to, but really it's that like looking up with your mouth open moment. So she's not like trying to gobble them, but she is having a thing. And then she realizes what she's doing. And she sort of puts her tongue back in her mouth. And it's less the like, it's not like a concern of like, oh no, have I been possessed or doing a thing? It is the realization of I have done a weird thing.
Ooh, the
It
old
is
shame.
it is the old shame of I have done a weird thing. And it doesn't matter that she's just with her siblings in a strange place. It is I followed a compulsion and I did the weird thing. And I know I've done the weird thing. And I'm not supposed to do that.
Does she look at the
My heart's
reaction from Matthew?
No, because she's
Okay.
trying not to look at Matthew and Clara because you have hooks in your face and she has an ice cream bowl for a head. Like
Then I will not tell you what his expression is when
yeah,
he sees you do that.
she is not, she is in her own, because she would look at her siblings for support possibly, but she can't look at them right now. She can't look at them. And so she can't know if they're judging her or not. She can't know if they're looking at her like she's weird or with pity, or if, you know, not, it doesn't matter. She has done the weird thing and the universe is judging her, and it doesn't matter that what her siblings are thinking, and she can't look at them because her brain won't let her right now.
I will say
Yeah.
for Erica's sake, since Clara would be able to see.
Yes.
When this starts happening, Matthew's immediate response is to look around for another skull as if he is expecting to need to get another one. Like there's that sort of moment where he's just like, oh, is she gonna eat the skull? So I need to get another one. Like
Well, that's on a fucking timer.
he is like so clearly in like his my sisters need me to make decisions and protect us mode, that like that is where his head goes. He's like, oh, my sister's about to eat a soul, quick, where's another soul so that we got a flashlight. Like that's so clearly where he's in his head space of like, if something happens, I must now go to the next decision-making process. And I don't know whether or not that is a good thing for her to see or a bad thing, but it is what she sees.
Clara's just ready to reach for another skull, and I was like, all right, Bethany probably needed a snack. That makes sense. So we're both surprised.
Now, I'm going to say...
Stop yourself.
I'm going to say there's about a half a dozen skulls, just for some kind of number. Since now we're talking about extra skulls. There's about a half a dozen skulls in this square. And you see not even the faintest glimmer of light anywhere when you look out there. You have no data that tells you that there is any other source of light here. And a lot of compelling data that tells you that if you run out of skulls, you will be blind.
Yeah, I might actually ask you to get another one just in case.
Just in case. That's
like let's double fist this because I currently can't hold one.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so
Clara
like
two.
if everybody else can take two, that is a because what if we drop one? What if someone takes it first?
Wow.
What if it like no, like there's this sort of feeling of like there's a panic that like Matthew has when he realizes that, where he's like, we could be alone in the dark with nothing to give us light. Like, and it again, like this comes from partially like, oh, Matthew worries about himself, but also it is he has gone into full I am man, I must be responsible for my ladies sort of mode, which is, though toxic, also coming from a place of protectiveness and love. But also toxic. Like he be. So I think that we're gonna try to go up.
Yeah, so Clara is gonna grab another skull.
Okay.
And then try to go up.
Well, it doesn't. Regrettably, it doesn't just like spiral back up to somewhere safe, which would just be like super cool. But that's not this game. So you go a little bit. You go a little bit up, and maybe it feels like it's up, or maybe just all of the buildings are doing a Tim Burton lean. That's lying to you. It is difficult to trust your senses. And the air here is very still and very empty. There's not a lot of stuff in the air. Like Metropolis had smells. It smelled like dust and old things and forgotten things. And at one point, it smelled like genocide and vitriol. But there were always some amount of smells. But this air is like... Imagine if like filtered air didn't like you know how water doesn't like pure water doesn't have a taste. It's like that, but air. It's like all of the things that could be in this air are gone, and the only things that exist are just, you know, oxygen, nitrogen, a couple of other trace elements, but there's nothing in it. And it's so quiet that every single sound you make, you can hear. And all of you are wrestling, even if you don't normally have it, with a little bit of like misophonia-like symptoms, where you are hearing so many facets of your own body and your own movement that they're kind of climbing in your brain. And you walk for a while. You don't know how long. It feels like maybe you walked for 10 minutes. It feels like you walked for 100 years through some jagged intersections, and some choices were made, and we kind of felt what we thought was up. And Bethany, at one point, no one was really sure. And so you held yourself and tried to feel the way the wind whistled through the void inside of you. And it worked, but you are probably never ever going to do that again.
Yeah, Yeah.
because it kind of feels like pulling one of your own teeth and using the socket for a thermostat.
Ugh.
And so yeah.
Yeah.
And so when all of you smell this, even at the tiniest concentration, the merest hint of it, it rams itself into your senses the way, like, with the strength of like fecal matter or sulfur or another. It's because your senses are so fine tuned through absence of input. I mean, you're right on the edge of that like sensory deprivation hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you didn't have things to look at and to listen to and know that they were there, you would already be in that place. And so when this smell, this weirdly earthy, floral, tobacco-y, pollen-y, but somehow silvery smell drifts across your nose, you recognize it. It is Azadeva.
Oh, well, that's nice. Is anybody else smelling that?
Oh, I smell it.
Okay. Okay. I'm glad it's not just me.
Does it seem stronger from any specific direction?
You could follow it. You don't
Does
think
it,
that you could follow this smell in any other environment and experience, but here you could follow it.
it's the question of like, is it going up or down if we followed it?
Right now, it doesn't feel like you've got a lot of up or down. Like it doesn't feel like
Okay.
you're going up. Like you don't get a sense of going up, but you also don't get a sense of going down. It feels a little bit like you're in a really, really big building, and it's so big that like a convention center, where there's always just there's a couple of steps over here and a couple of steps down here, and like you step down into the food court, but you step up, and you've changed elevations a couple times as you've gone through. And like at one point you had to climb over something that had collapsed, and at another point the only way to get anywhere was to like go down and around and up. So the vibe is generally like that you're going away from the all-consuming whatever the fuck, but up is a difficult way to feel. But it feels close enough to the right way, or a right way, that you don't feel like following it would be any worse of a decision than you could possibly be making.
Great.
I basically Matthew will look at Clara and down at Bethany and basically say it has never been a bad choice for us to try to talk to the Azadeva so far.
We've helped them and they've helped us.
Let's hope that this isn't the first time that it is. And he will start following the scent.
Yep.
As you follow it, its hallucinogenic properties, its opioid properties start to affect you. And so when you start experiencing that kind of like tranciness, what's happening to you in this moment? Like in the darkness, what are you seeing and hearing? Matthew, you come to a stop, and it's just one of those moments where you're traveling and you just kind of have to stop for a minute. And you look over, and there's this beautiful, like, church window. It's got the really great high art and lots of stonework and very fancy, but its shutters are thrown open, and it just gazes out into perfect black. And in that black, what does Matthew see?
I think that he sees first sunlight because God. He's like, there's a certain level of like, he wants warmth and sunlight like nobody's business right now because they are things that make him feel like that he is not in a place that is artificial.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's never thought of himself as a nature person, but right now, man, does he want some nature. But I think also he hears the bustle of the city. He hears the he hears home. He hears back in Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
Like the sounds of the street, the sounds of you know, people greeting each other. It's been a long time since he's been home, and I think that it hits him right in the homesickness.
Yeah, probably does. Okay. Bethany, you don't really look anywhere. Your world is unreal right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your state, what does the scent of the Azadeva bring to you?
Warmth. The only warmth she has right now, and she has been like very attached to it, is her brother's because he's been carrying her. So she has some amount of his body heat in this cold. And she's still wounded and soul hungry and all of these things. And so and everything is overwhelming. So she has been gently shivering in the way where sometimes it is an actual reaction to cold, and sometimes it is like stress and tension and just shaking. She has been a tremble in Matthew's arms with this skull, and Matthew can feel it and Clara can see it, just like some of the tension leaving her body, in the way that like when you've been very cold and you've been so cold that you're not even shivering anymore, you're just like tense, and you go somewhere that's warm and suddenly all of the blood is in your body and warm is in your extremities and it feels gently tingly, but it feels kind of like you're melting, and you don't, the rigidity of all that tension is gone, but you're not quite sure like that your body is in its exact proper shape. Everything feels slightly swollen and too big in your extremities. And so she is warm, and it is warm like come inside and have hot chocolate after you've been playing in the snow so long your fingers are red warm. Like everything is tingly and everything is gently dripping, like the snow on your hair and your nose because it's been too cold, and everything still feels slightly numb. So you're holding something warm, but you're afraid you're going to drop it because you can't feel your fingertips except for the part where they're tingling and pulsing against this thing. So you have no grip, but you're very aware that you're holding it. So the skull is kind of a big hot chocolate cup currently at her. And she's trying very hard not to drop it. And it's still a space that is like no control over like what your body is necessarily doing, but it's okay because it's warm and it's safe and other people are giving you things, and like it's okay that you don't have that control.
That's a lot of feelings.
That's a lot of feelings. That's where Bethany is.
Where is Clara in this moment?
Holding two skulls and trying to just keep everything together and hoping she hasn't killed her family permanently, brought them to the end of the world and not have any way to get them out. And it's very quiet and she still feels very empty. It's like the top half of her is hollowed out. So in that echoing of the misophonia, she can, all of her feels so hollow. So it's just like this rattle of her own heartbeat in her hollow chest and her hollow head. And then the bottom half is this warmth, the baby, and this weight that she's just got to protect at all costs because that's the only thing that makes sense now. And every time she looks up, it's just darkness and death. And probably if she's hallucinating something on the distance, it's the three of them laying dead on pyres because she's brought them to the underworld and she has no way to get them out that she knows of right now. So she's trying not to look into the darkness or listen to her own heartbeat or think of anything. She's just going forward after that scent.
Okay. And in this state of vulnerability in many ways, both environmental and emotional, when you see the first Azadeva as it enters into kind of like your very small radius of cold light, it's both an incredible joy and a deep, deep, sorrowful disappointment. Because you know the Azadeva, you know that generally they are kind, or at the very least personable. You know that they are, while omnivores, they're not predators. There's a fairly good chance that they're not going to kill you and strip the flesh from your bones simply for the calories. But when you see this Azadeva and you see that it is naked and dirty in that long-term street living dirty, that ground in no shower, no time to clean, no availability of the things that keep you clean. And so when you see that it is in that state, it feels a little bit like this Azadeva broke a promise to you that it didn't know it made.
Mm.
And it stares at you in abject terror. And one of you gets one shot to try to make this better. So pick and tell me how you do it.
Do you want to do it, Erica?
I will. Yeah.
Kate booped
Our
her own
social
snoot.
maven.
Yeah.
Our social maven.
Bethany's
Clara-
not it. She can't do it right now.
Clara moves so both of the skulls she's holding are like basically held like a baby again in one arm. So she's like cradling them.
Mm-hmm.
And then she has her other hand up and looks also and makes herself look slightly smaller and scared and as vulnerable as she feels. And she just goes, "We're lost here too. We have many friends like you and we would like to help."
let's see how well your vulnerability has shown. So let's do, what's that move called?
The
Influence
influence other, or that's
Yep, that's good enough. It's
yeah,
not
I'm
quite
not
right, but it's
seeing
good
any other
enough.
move that, yeah. Or act under
Yeah.
pressure. That would be the only other thing, I would think.
Okay, let's. Yeah, I think the consequences of act under pressure feel more in line with the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So let's roll plus coolness.
Yeah. All right. Oh, that's pretty good. 13. Oh, I don't know if I have enough coolness to get over this. Oh, I don't. I kicked myself by offering act under pressure because I would have been fine with charisma. So it's middle. I got a
Okay.
mid success.
You managed to keep this Azadeva from running, but it doesn't calm down. Like, it doesn't go, okay, they're friends.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, everybody, be gone. And so it's still cautious and twitchy, but it does kind of start doing like hand gestures, like follow me. And it's so terrible because it's that beautiful full body curve, that seductive motion, but it's dirty and it's crouched down on the ground and it's naked and it's beautiful long fingers. You can see the filth crusted both under and around the nails. And so it is extremely uncomfortable. And so it just kind of does a come with me, come with me, come with me. And it leads you along. And then it kind of leads you around a corner and into a space that is very barely lit with kind of this yellowy, and by yellow I don't mean sunlight, by yellow I mean like the mold you find on like in your vegetables on the Tupperware, like that the ungood yellow. I say such cool things and I say ungood yellow.
Yeah.
And there are like a dozen Azadeva here, but they're very clearly feral and touchy and scared.
Mm-hmm.
And they all kind of start climbing down their perches. You see where they've made little nests in the walls and bundled things, and you don't really want to think about where those softer than stone bundles are from or who they're from.
Okay.
Well, I think we're all going to be done at 10:30 tonight. And as they start crawling towards you, you hear a voice in English behind them say, "Halt." And it is masculine, and it is basso, and it is Matthew recognizes a voice of power. Clara recognizes a stage voice. Bethany, this is the voice of your father at his most bombastic. Just that, like, full long diaphragm, the whole thing. And he says, "Halt." And walking out of the darkness that's still not lit enough for you is a man. And you don't really know what color his skin was when he was alive, because it's not that color anymore, because it is bleached somehow, and there are veins underneath his skin, and his fat is missing, so you can see the shape of his skull underneath the flesh, and you can see the way his hands have lengthened into claws, and you can, oh, Clara, you know what's happening underneath his mouth. You can almost see he's so gaunt, you could almost see the bone and muscle action of the fang sliding out of his mouth. And he is wearing a skin. He is wearing someone's skin. He has made clothes out of a person, because you can see the nipples and the hair and the belly button on the leathers that are hanging off of him. And he says, "Tell me why you are here, and tell me true, or you will never leave." And that's where we're going to stop.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay.
Ugh.
Wow.
Take your meds, drink your water, and don't act like the Van Horsts.
Yes.
And so we will see you very soon.